tracking at northeast, 3 or 4, increasing 5 or 6 later. Mainly slide.
I'm David Harradine, I'm the artistic director of Fevered Sleep and director and one of the co-creators of the Weather Factory. I'm standing in the hallway of Cynwyd, a house in Penygroes in Gwynedd near Carnarvon. This is the space that people walk into when they first arrive at the house before discovering the piece. I was invited by National Theatre Wales to come to Wales on a research trip last summer 2009, and John and Lucy were putting together their map, the kind of theatre map of Wales for their first year. And they were interested in working with me, but they weren't sure where they might place me if we did something. So I spent a week in a hire car driving around, and I went everywhere from Cardiff to St David's in the southwest to the kind of English border, to Anglesey and Snowdonia. And I had a whole series of things planned for this week when I was travelling around, and almost everything I'd got planned was called off because of the weather. So I'd arranged to climb Snowdon, specifically to look at the light from the summit on a clear day, and the rain was so atrocious when I was in Llanberis planning to climb Snowdon that I didn't even bother, because I knew there'd be nothing to see when I got to the top. The next day I'd arranged to visit a lighthouse on Anglesey. I arrived, and as I arrived it was evacuated because the wind was so strong it wasn't safe to go on the island. A whole series of things like that. Driving somewhere, and as I arrived the rain came down, driving away and the sun came out, going back and the rain came down. So I went back to Cardiff and said all my plans have been scuppered by the weather, so I think we should make a project about that. So I guess the next step was twofold. One part of it was to come on this series of visits because it felt really important to me and to National Theatre Wales, I think, that the piece that I made really related to the place that it was being made for. So I came more or less once a month for a year to Snowdonia to travel around and to get a sense of the landscape and to get a sense of the weather. So that was one thing that was going on. And at the same time, we were thinking about what kind of location the piece might happen in. And I knew that I didn't want to make a piece in a theatre. It wasn't going to be a theatre show. I wanted to make something much more experiential for an audience to enter into physically. And we looked at all sorts of locations, everything from factories, hence the title, to airfields and underground tunnels and houses. And as soon as I came in this house, actually, specifically, it just felt right. And it suddenly became really clear that the weather is partly something that happens outside, and it's a natural phenomenon, but the weather also is something which people talk about. And the weather is something which people create. And the weather is really something you experience from inside your house. And I had this image of being indoors with the weather raging outside, and then a question of what would happen if the weather came in to live with you. So I guess that's what happens in this piece. And so these two things happened simultaneously, that I was looking at the landscape and looking at the weather and thinking about sights, and eventually, yeah, we ended up here.
Rain or showers, moderate or good, but occasionally poor. The outlook for the following